Okay, welcome to our general meeting. We have agendas on the table at the door, and for people who were here at the last meeting, we have the draft minutes of the February meeting. So if you came to the February meeting, please take a copy of the draft minutes and check that they're okay. And also, would everybody at some stage during the meeting sign the attendance sheet so that we know how many people attended and we can prove that we had a quorum and our decisions are valid. But before we go into the details of the meeting, let's have a presentation on Canberra and what they're up to.
Thank you, Les. Thanks for having me tonight and for listening to me at last month's meeting. So I'm the project director for the Kamberra project, and I wanted to give you an update on our journey so far and the implications of DA Draft Amendment 91 on the project. So for those that aren't familiar with the project, Kamberra is quite a large site. It's 12.5 hectares. It's one of the biggest sites on that corridor. It has over 1 kilometre of frontage, just over 1 kilometre of frontage to Sullivan's Creek here, and to the Federal Highway and Flemington Road, so which is also light rail. So it's got the Phillip Avenue light rail stop here and an Epic light rail stop just here. So it's, from a transit-oriented development perspective, it's very well located next to that facility. And distance-wise, you guys probably know all of this. It's 5 k's to the CBD, and again from a city point of view, that's in an inner location. So our journey with Canberra started in 2014, and it's still going, and we still don't have a territory plan variation. It was first conceived by Alistair Swain. Some of you may know Alistair Swain. He was the government architect, and he did a lot of projects, had a very long and distinguished career in Canberra, and did a lot of other projects around Australia with the group that owned the site, which is the Elvin Group. So in 2015, all of the environmental heritage studies, engineering studies and urban design work was done, and that was to inform a site-specific territory plan variation, so just for the Canberra site. At that time, the ACT government advised that they were working on a gateway urban renewal strategy, and that would need to be completed before we could progress the territory plan variation, which is okay. And we commenced our community consultations in 2015 as well on site, and we came and met with a number of different community groups. In 2016, they released their City and Gateway Renewal Strategy. We then lodged the planning study for the site, which is the first step in the territory plan variation. The NCA approved Amendment 86, which allowed for urban development along the corridor around the Barton Highway. Then we were at the point, then caretaker period, I don't know whether you remember the ACT election in late 2016. So we were asked kind of advised not to put the planning study onto public consultation because it would have overlapped with the caretaker period of the election. At the end of 2016, we held 3 community workshops, which were facilitated by a Professor of Urban Design, James Hayter, and some of you guys came to those workshops. And that's where we developed what we call the co-design master plan. James Hayter he's got a doctorate in urban design. He did it at Harvard. He knows a lot about urban design, so we made sure we got an expert in, and he did that with Tanya Park. And we looked at opportunities and constraints for the sites, looked at projects in Canberra, nationally and internationally, and then came up with a master plan over a series of 3 nights. Then in 2017, the Planning Minister announced Canberra as a demonstration precinct in the ACT Assembly. which was exciting. But we heard nothing about it, so we weren't told in advance that was going to happen. It was still a good event, but subsequent to that announcement, we heard nothing, and I'll talk about that briefly. We lodged the draft development control plan with the NCA. We agreed that because we have dual jurisdictions. We have NCA and we have ACT government, so two planning jurisdictions. We then agreed joint consultation of the NCA's development control plan with the planning study, that would happen together, so we're not confusing, not having multiple consultations around sort of the same issues. Then in late 2017, and that took a long time to get to that point, late 2017 the NCA said, sorry, we have to stop the project, we're going to do a corridor-wide framework, and you need to wait until that's completed. This is after this framework. To go back a step, you may recall the statement of planning intent that was released by Minister Gentleman in 2016, and they did a lot of consultation around that statement. It identified 4 planning priorities for Canberra: creating sustainable, compact, livable neighbourhoods, delivering high quality public spaces, delivering outcome-focused planning system to reward design excellence and innovation, and engaging with the community, all worthy pursuits and everything, and things that we want. They then identified immediate, short-term and medium-term objectives or actions to make that happen. The number one immediate action was to identify a number of demonstration precincts across Canberra to undergo an innovative planning process to guide future change and sustainable development. And this is what he said in the Assembly in March 2017. There was a question on notice from the Greens member asking, you made this announcement, have there been any demonstration precincts? And Canberra was announced. And Canberra met these criteria: innovative planning, sustainable development, innovative alternative, commercial more sensitive design, blah, blah, blah. We have heard nothing. There has been zero action on that policy. And the Minister stood up and announced that in the Assembly, and you hear nothing. So what does that mean when you think about that? If a Minister can announce a policy, announce a project in the Assembly, and then nothing happens, what does that say about our Assembly and policies? And you kind of become a little bit apathetic. Yeah, so now I'm jumping forward to Draft Amendment 91, which you all know about, I presume. Yep. So closed on March the 6th, for the latest version. And we had a number of submissions, and you guys made a submission, and that's wonderful, because the government needs to hear the voices of the community more than developers. So the NCCC submission was: the informal park boulevard provides many areas of concern. It's supposed to be informal in design and building. To mandate each side of the boulevard mirror its opposite creates a regimentation, blah, blah, blah. So it's all very supportive of the Kamberra Master Plan, which was not reflected in Draft Amendment 91. So in the draft framework that was released in March last year, it generally reflected the Community Master Plan. I'll go through it, jumping ahead. I can jump around. Lighting Community Association was also supportive, because I'm on a time limit here. As was Gungahlin Community Council, and they really wanted to focus on Flemington Road as the gateway to Gungahlin. That's where the light rail enters the corridor. They want nodes, no buildings there, so taller buildings there. And they're really keen on the Sullivan's Creek corridor being extended all the way out to Gungahlin. An interesting fact about that was that I think in those master plan documents they said that in a 6-month period 250,000 people used the Lynham section of the Sullivan's Creek corridor, the cycle path. It's the most highly used section in Canberra, and wouldn't that be cool if that went all the way out to Gungahlin, which is one of the things that we wanted in our master plan. The other thing that happened with DA91 is the industry peak bodies combined. So kind of felt pretty strongly about that document as well. And you had Property Council, Master Builders, Canberra Business Chamber, Planning Institute, Institute of Landscape Architects, and Institute of Architects all come together and do a single submission, which is unprecedented, I think. The section of that submission that relates to Canberra is trees are the dominant feature of the informal park boulevard, and they have a major factor in design controls. The buildings will sit behind these trees, so there's a potential to accommodate increased building heights, suggested at 18 metres, which was what was in the draft framework, so 6 stories, 5 stories, depending on whether you include the roof within the 18 metres or not. And there should be a node at Phillip Avenue and Federal Highway, and a market building at Flemington Road. Now, we had a community meeting last night, and Caroline has been a member of this part of Canberra, but she's just moved, Caroline McCoutier, the Greens member. She has been attending our meetings, and she couldn't come last night, and she offered this statement, which is basically supporting Canberra and supporting the community positions, I guess, on DA 91. So this was some of the benchmarking we did back in 2016 for the master plan, where we looked at Central Park in Sydney, New Acton, Kingston Foreshore, and then some overseas projects. We decided we didn't want this. We didn't want a car-dominated sort of master plan or urban form. We wanted a village. Strange. I'm not sure what the right word is, but that's what we have to build. That's what DA 91 says we have to build. 3-storey masonry pitched roof buildings. We wanted this sort of stuff. We wanted sustainable built form, lots of open space dominated by the trees, and activate Sullivan's Creek. And this was an interpretation by James Hayter. It's indicative. It's certainly not a plan of buildings that are going to be built. It's sort of showing the principles. And what you can see is the idea was to bring the trees that dominate the Federal Highway corridor, which is 100 metres wide, into the site, and then also naturalise Sullivan's Creek, plant that out and bring that in as well. So the idea was that by having height, as in 6 metres, and in our master plan we wanted elements of 4 stories and elements of 8 stories, so variety in building heights, not just up to one level. That allows us to have increased open space. So the idea was we had 30% buildings, 33% and 67% open space. The good thing about that is you can actually have deep-rooted planting. You can have big trees. And when you have big trees, you can actually make a difference to your microclimate, and that can actually make a valuable contribution. Some of the stuff that's being developed in Dixon and around town at the moment, you will notice that the entire site area is excavated to the boundary. So and they put in the basement, and then they put the buildings on top, which then means that the trees are put in planter boxes. And when you put trees in planter boxes, you can't have big trees. You're talking small trees, which then don't contribute at all to the microclimate. So we didn't want that. We wanted space for big trees. There's a lot of trees on the Canberra site. There's a lot of trees along the avenue. We wanted to amplify that and actually contribute to the microclimate. Yep.
Okay, just a quick question.
Yep.
This Kamberra site is just this outlined on the first
slide, 12.5 hectares. Yeah. It's a 10-year project. It's the size of a small suburb. It's big. It's not a single unit site, so which is really good because it gives us a lot of. I'll talk about the opportunity in terms of innovation. Yep.
So it is adjoining Epic on one side?
Yes, so Flemington Road on the Epic side, all the way down to the vets at Barton Highway. Yeah, no, that's all right. That's all right. So this is what we have to build under DA 91. It's reduced the height to 12 metres. 12 metres includes the roof. It's stipulated masonry partitions, so brick partitions between balconies on the buildings, which effectively means you have to build a brick building. We can't build timber and then have brick partitions. And it's also mandated pitched roofs, which means we can't activate our rooftops, we can't plant out our rooftops, we can't use our rooftops for renewable energy.
I was wondering why, did they give any rationale as to why they've
No.
this?
No, if you look at, it wasn't in the draft, it appeared in the final that was released in December, and it's part of the same informal park boulevard as Ioane and the other parts of Downer on the other side of the Ioane, which don't have those controls.
Yeah.
So no, there's no rationale towards it, and it's not visionary. And I'll talk about drones and how buildings are changing and architecture of our buildings is changing, because what's happening with that type of technology is buildings that have been serviced by the ground plane for forever are now going to start being serviced at the rooftops. Okay, we don't want drones. We want drones. They're going to be life-changing for people with, mobility issues. They'll be a novelty for most of us and a convenience for some. But the Alphabet or Project Wing mob that are in Mitchell that have bought their warehouse, that have signed up Chemist Warehouse and Bunnings and all those sort of guys, they're dealing with this right now. And they're talking about how do we handle the noise issues, how do we handle privacy issues. We don't want drones flying past our balconies and our windows to deliver to the neighbouring apartment. We don't want them delivering down onto the ground plane past all our windows. The ideal position, the logical position is the rooftops. So we should have lift access to all our roofs, and that's how it should happen. Which is why I don't want pitched roofs, apart from the sustainability issues around microclimate as well. So this is what we'll have to build. So going back to March, the framework in March, you may recognise the document that was released in March. So this is our Canberra project here. It shows a node at Phillip Avenue of 22 metres. This green is 18 metres, so that's the 5 stories and 6 stories. And there's no development shown on Southwell Park, which I'll tell you about. This jumps to the final framework that was released in December. This is now 12 metres. The node has gone. Still no development at Southwell Park, so that's what we released in December. This is what's in Draft Amendment 91 that was released in January, where the submissions is closed. It shows 12 metres, no node, and interestingly this appears, and I got this out of the Lynon Community Association submission. That is 7 hectares, and that's 18 metre high buildings. It wipes out the entire ACT netball courts. Those are the beach volleyball courts, and these are the playing fields. These are the access apartments just here. So that wasn't, if you read the Lynon report, that wasn't consulted on. This was what was presented to a Downer workshop, and some of you might have had the privilege of attending that. What happened here was all of the Downer residents were mailed an invitation to attend a workshop during the consultation period for the March framework, and they were presented with some work in progress drawings, which still showed the 18 metres and the nodes here. But that opportunity wasn't extended to the Watson residents, the Lynon residents, and the Dixon residents. And I think it was in response to a sense that the Downer residents weren't happy with the development that was shown in Downer. But regardless, I think the same opportunity should be offered to all. And this is a quote which I think is really interesting, that is again out of the March framework. Changes to the planning controls for the Watson and Downer side of the federal highway are not proposed in the short term. However, in the longer term, it would be appropriate to investigate and determine appropriate land use zoning and built form controls to identify how these areas could be redeveloped in the future consistent with the vision for the city and gateway. Couldn't agree more. So the frameworks set the long-term vision. Draft Amendment 91 permits development where it is currently possible, and you would have another amendment to the National Capital Plan in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, when the demographics of the suburbs have changed, when there's already been all the development along the corridor that can be done now, and you know, there's a natural evolution, I guess, and that's when you'd start to consider those things. So in my opinion, I don't think you really need to show 18 metre and 12 metre development in Draft Amendment 91. It's contemplated, but you don't need to mandate it now. That's my opinion. So Canberra's sustainability initiatives. So one of the things that we looked at, we've had a long time to do it, is what do we want to do with our buildings? Because of the scale of the project, we have the ability to introduce innovation and benchmark it and measure it and roll it out over the project. So we can get an economy of scale that you just can't get if you're delivering one apartment project on its own. Okay? And so the sort of the principles of the precinct are about reducing the impact on the environment, being sustainable and lowering people's living costs and improving livability. So how do we do that? Well, traditionally, and if you look at the territory plan, if you look at SEP 65 in New South Wales, they talk about solar passive design, which focuses on cross-ventilation of apartments. It focuses on daylight hours in winter, the winter solstice, which is good and important. But I think there's a shift. I think that's got to change, and I think it's about how well our buildings handle heat waves, how well our open spaces handle heat waves, how much energy is consumed to manage the thermal. What is the thermal energy demand of our buildings, the heating bills? Because that's reading an article, and I don't know where it was, but that's the number one concern for a lot of homeowners is their energy bills. So how do we reduce that? And then looking at the building materials we're using to reduce the embodied energy in our building materials. And the way to do that, so we've done a lot of work on this, and we went to Vancouver in British Columbia in 2017 and looked at what they're doing. So Vancouver's City Council is very progressive. They're world leaders. They've got a vision of being carbon neutral by 2030. All of their buildings that they are building, they've changed their planning laws, so they are mandating what is called passive house. And passive house reduces your energy requirements by up to 90%. And it does that by having what they call a high performance envelope. So you're just building your home is very well insulated. You're talking double glazing and triple glazing. You remove all of the air gaps. You pressure test the building before you start your internal fit out. And by doing that, you can control the indoor environment a lot more. And it's not susceptible, because there's no air leakage, it's not susceptible to the outdoor environment either. And you get rid of all your thermal bridges. So thermal bridges is where the environment and the temperature outside is easily transferred inside. And if you've got aluminium windows at home and it's freezing cold outside in winter and you touch the aluminium frame inside, it's still freezing cold because you've got a thermal bridge. Well, with passive house certified windows, that's what they call thermally broken. So the internal aluminium frame is not connected to the external frame, and there's actually a rubber seal. So the internal frame is at room temperature, indoor temperature, so you don't get that conduction, okay? So that's the answer. And they're mandating passive house in all of the apartment buildings and homes in Vancouver and their commercial buildings. And in fact, when we went over there, they were just building their first passive house multi-unit site. We were able to tour that while it was still under construction. That's now finished, and they're building a few more. We visited the tallest timber structure in the world, which was a place called Brock Commons at the University of British Columbia. That was 18 stories student accommodation. Good thing about timber is very low embodied energy. So you don't use concrete. Concrete has high embodied energy. Cement's really bad. Timber's good, basically. And when you think about that, we're talking about a company that is a concrete company. The Elvin Group runs concreting businesses. They've been going for 50 years. They're second generation. They want to build timber houses. They generate more electricity on their concrete plants than they consume. They recycle their water and their aggregates. They are very focused on the environment. And they've done research projects and are doing research projects with University of New South Wales around more sustainable concrete mixes and stuff. So they're very progressive. Drones, I can send that link. There's a really good video. It's about 15 minutes long about drones and cities and architecture. That is under construction right now. That is a passive house apartment building in Vancouver. Oops. This is more detail about what passive house is. This is the first, Monash University has just completed the first student accommodation built to passive house standards in their Peninsula campus. We went down there last year and had a look at that. That opened at the beginning of this year and it's got students living in it now. And that's been certified to passive house standards. The only other project in terms of apartments that's been done is an 11-unit, one-bedroom complex in Sydney that finished at the end of last year as well. So what we're proposing here, if we're able to roll it out, and it will cost more, so it may be a case of doing it gradually, because we'll be competing against other apartment buildings that don't do it, and people look at the size of the apartment and look at the price and they make their decision on that base, rather than the energy costs and all of those sorts of things. But over time, because of the size of the project, we should be able to achieve some efficiencies. We've also collaborated with the University of Canberra around them running research projects to benchmark our performance. So they're all the things that we wanted to do, and unfortunately under DA 91, we're not. We'll be doing conventional 3-storey construction with pitched roofs. So we're not happy about that. We've written our own submission. You guys have written submissions, and we want to change it. So open to some ideas. So we do need your support. Your support, your voice is really important. When we say it doesn't carry anywhere near as much weight as when the community says it. These things are aligned with government policy, but it's the implementation is where it's gone wrong. Okay, we can live with the draft framework requirements and do and invest in these initiatives. We can't do it with the 3-storey stuff because we need scale to do this. Yep.
I just recommend that you look into passive house experiences in countries that have over 20 years experience with it.
Yeah.
Like Germany.
Yeah, well,
because there are
big
problems with inhabitants of passive houses and their function. So you better look at this closely.
No, there's overheating issues in some of those buildings, but they are managing them. We had so it was developed in Germany in the 1970s, and if you go to passivehouse.com, you'll be able to look at the rollout across the globe really. So it really is picking up internationally as a preferred form of construction. In the Monash Uni project, the issue was overheating from the occupants from the fridge, because they have smaller rooms. The fridge, the computer and the occupants, your own expiration was contributing to overheating. Why we went to Vancouver was not so much the Vancouver climate. In summer it's a little bit similar. There were bushfires there when we were there. But we went inland because inland around Kelowna, their summers are quite hot and their winters are more mild. So they still have snow and that, but it's much more similar to Canberra. Yep.
The other issue I'd like to see people think about is when there's so little fresh air coming into a house, when it's so well sealed, you're not getting fresh air into the house.
Sorry, I didn't mention that. There's a mechanical air exchange unit. So what you're exactly right. There's this thing called seal it tight, ventilate right. So when you do build an airtight box, you've still got openable windows. So if you want to open your windows, you can. But when the windows are closed, you have mechanical air exchange. And what's good about that is it sucks the air out and replaces it with return air, and in winter that return air is preheated, and also it deals with the moisture levels. So you'll have noticed in small apartments...
It goes over a heat exchanger and,
yes.
and a filter.
Correct. So you'll notice in small apartments in Canberra in winter, if you've got it, because a lot of apartments in Canberra are already pretty well sealed, not so much houses, and you get condensation issues inside, and you get mould and you get stale air. And the reason for that is the bathroom exhausts don't work. You turn them on and kind of nothing happens. That's because there's no return air. There's not enough leaks in the apartment for the air to actually be sucked out. There's often in apartments there is front venting dryers, and so they're expelling moist air into the apartment. There is recirculating range hoods which deal with the odour, but they don't externally exhaust the moist air, so that comes back in, and you're living in there and it's cold, so you've got the heater on and the window's shut, so you've got all this moisture build up that doesn't get out. Now in a passive house apartment, that's automatically dealt with. You don't need to think about it because it's done through the air exchange.
Okay, we just have one more
Yeah,
question,
sorry.
and then we'll have to move on.
Can I suggest that you provide a form of words and an address, or several suggestions of words, so that we can, because not everyone will sit down and write that. An objection.
Is there a mailing list
And a mail, yes.
for you guys?
Yeah.
You've got info at North Canberra comes to the committee,
Yeah.
and
How does it get out to the...
we can send emails out to the members.
Okay.
So what have you done today to help?
So we've
guard
written
against
to...
Amendment 91?
We did our own submission. Some of this sustainability stuff we didn't declare publicly because we felt it was our own IP, but we've got nothing to lose now,
Yeah, right.
so we have declared it. So we've done public submissions to the NCA. We've lobbied ACT government as well, and we're meeting with NCA on site on Friday. We have we've requested meetings with the Minister and the Chief Minister, but that's been deferred back. So I don't know whether you remember last month's meeting when the Minister Stephen Smith was here, and she said you've got to talk to the NCA, you've got to lobby the NCA.
So your lobbying is good, but numbers count as well.
Yes.
So even a short submission is counted as a number.
So what can we do,
Yeah.
just as individual members of the community, to help you
Make submissions.
Could we make a submission?
One of at the meeting last night at our community meeting, there were representatives from Gungahlin, from here, and from Lynham and Watson. And what we were talking about at the end of the meeting there was potentially whether there's any interest in doing what the industry peak bodies did, which is a consolidated,
That'll be really good.
because that hasn't been done before. So you need to do something to amplify the voice, to make it louder, to make people think, oh, this is different, maybe we better look at it.
Yeah.
That was something that was talked about by some of those groups last night. So I don't know whether that's something that would be of interest to NCCC.
What we've done in the Campbell Community Association with some of our submissions is we've written one submission and then made it available so that people can support it.
Yeah.
And just give an email address in the ACT government and it just gets sent off there. So
Well,
they could get, I mean,
Really desperate.
it's very easy for people to make a submission when you provide it and just tell them to say, oh, we support this and send it off.
Well, it needs to be done pretty quickly because they're trying to get this through before the election.
So Leon's got the connections with the inner south, the other councils, and the other councils can then feed into the association. So there definitely is the communication network that can be tapped into pretty quickly. So more prescriptive.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me go.
Sorry to cut you off here.
No, that's fine.
I've been trying to avoid getting involved in this because I knew there was a lot to learn and I didn't want to have to learn it.
And
Tonight I've been forced to learn some of it. Thank you.
I'm happy to come back and, this is a journey. We're here. Hopefully we'll get what we want and we can come back and do other presentations.